Hiya. This is a book that changed my life. I read it in prison. It was given to me by the governor of Leicester Prison, who himself was an ex-building worker, and it changed my life. It changed the direction of my politics, what I thought and knew about politics. It was an eye-opener. I only wish I had a dozen copies to give to people to come in and read. I haven't. This is mine. It's the only copy I've got. But I have sent them all over the world. I've sent them to Australia, to Canada. I even sent a copy to China. It's the best book you can ever read, and it will put you on the right path for your politics for the rest of your life. It's called The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist. It's a must.
The house was named The Cave. It was a large, old-fashioned 3-storied building, standing in about an acre of ground, a mile outside the town of Mugsborough. It had been unoccupied for many years and was now being altered and renovated for its new owner by the firm of Rushton and Company, builders and decorators. Altogether, about 25 men were working there: carpenters, plumbers, plasterers, bricklayers and painters, besides several unskilled labourers. They were putting new floors where the old ones were decayed, and making 2 rooms into one by demolishing the parting wall and substituting an iron girder. They were replacing window frames and sashes, replastering cracked ceilings and walls, cutting openings and fitting doors where no doors had ever been before. They were taking down broken chimney pots and fixing new ones in their places. They were washing the old whitewash off the ceilings and scraping the old paper off the walls. The air was full of the sounds of hammering and sawing, the ringing of trowels, the rattle of pails, the splashing of water brushes and the scraping of the stripping knives. It was also heavily laden with dust and disease germs, powdered mortar, lime, plaster, and the dirt that had been accumulating within the old house for years. In brief, those employed there might be said to be living in a tariff reform paradise. They had plenty of work. At 12 o'clock, Bob Crass, the painter's foreman, blew a prolonged blast upon a whistle, and all hands assembled in the kitchen, where Bert the apprentice had already prepared the tea in the large galvanised iron pail placed in the middle of the floor. By the side of the pail were a number of old jam jars, mugs, dilapidated teacups, and 1 or 2 empty condensed milk tins. Each man on the job paid Bert 3p a week for the tea and sugar. They did not have milk, and although they had tea at breakfast time as well as at dinner time, the lad was generally considered to be making a fortune. Steps laid sideways in front of the fire at a distance of about 8 feet, with a plank placed across, several upturned pails, and the drawers belonging to the dresser formed the seating accommodation. The floor was covered with all manner of debris, dust, dirt, fragments of old mortar and plaster. A sack of cement was leaning against one of the walls, and a bucket containing some stale whitewash stood in one corner. He filled his cup, jam jar, or condensed milk tin with tea from the steaming pail before sitting down. Most of them brought the food in little wicker baskets, which they held on their laps or placed on the floor beside them. At first, there was no attempt at conversation, and nothing was heard but the sounds of eating and drinking and the frizzling of the bloater, which Easton, one of the painters, was toasting on the end of a pointed stick at the fire. "I don't think much of this bloody tea," suddenly remarked Sawkins, one of the labourers. "Well, it ought to be all right," retorted Bert. "It's been billing ever since 11:30. Bert White was a frail-looking, weedy, pale-faced boy, 15 years of age and about 4 feet 9 inches in height. His trousers were part of a suit that he had once worn for best, but that was so long ago that they had become too small for him, fitting rather tightly and scarcely reaching the top of his patched and broken hobnail boots. The knees had been patched with square pieces of cloth, several shades darker than the original fabric, and these patches were now all in rags. His coat was several sizes too large for him and hung about him like a dirty, ragged sack. He was a pitiable spectacle of neglect and wretchedness as he sat there on an upturned pail, eating his bread and cheese with fingers that, like his clothing, were grimed with paint and dirt. "Well then, you can't have put enough tea in, or else you've been using up what was left yesterday," continued Sawkins. "Why the bloody hell don't you leave the boy alone?" said Harlow, another painter. "If you don't like the tea, you needn't drink it. I'm sick of listening to you about it every damn day." "For you to say I needn't drink it," answered Sawkins, "but I've paid me share, and I've got a right to express an opinion. It's my belief that half the money we give him is spent in penny horribles. He's always got one in his hand, and to make what tea he does buy last, he collects all the slops what's left and piles it up day after day." "No, I don't," says Bert, who was on the verge of tears. "It's not me what buys the things at all. I gives all the money I gets to Crass, and he buys them himself, so there." At this revelation, some of the men furtively exchanged significant glances, and Crass, the foreman, became very red.